Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs. We're so glad you joined us today, and welcome to the program.
Yes.
It's a beautiful spring day as we're recording this.
It's a little chilly.
Summer is on the way, and that's something I look forward to.
That's true, because it is chilly today, and parts of the United States are snowing.
That's exactly right.
On this
As
day.
we record this, we have friends who are getting snow, and it's springtime.
Yes.
Bring it on.
Amazing.
I'm so glad we live in the South.
Yeah, we're not getting snow.
No.
That's good.
That's exactly right. Well, we're so glad you joined us. We've been hearing from some of you along the way and would love to hear from more of you.
Yes, thank you.
And we are beginning to prepare towards our next question and answer podcast. And so if you're thinking of any questions you'd like us to address in coming podcasts, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
And you certainly can go to keepingityoungpodcast.com. You can send us a message. You can send us an email. Either way, we'd love to hear from you. And certainly thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, for sharing, for liking, for signing up. And we do have several things we've been talking about with our producer. We're going to be coming up with some series that actually will be available. They'll be extra outside the podcast, but we'll be going deeper into some issues of learning how to have greater conversations, dealing with conflict resolution, the bedroom, and a whole lot of issues like that. But we'll be doing those, and they'll be available in coming months for purchase online. And so that's kind of a new direction, and we have a sponsor that will be joining us soon to sponsor the Keeping It Young.
Yes.
And so we're looking forward to all of that, and we look forward to serving you more and more in continuing days ahead.
And I'm sure we'll have more information about that as things get rolling.
We're working on that, trying to get all that together even now.
Yes.
So thank you so much, though, for joining us and being a part of our podcast. As you know, we have been doing a series, and we're going to try to finish it today. We've been doing a series about using technology wisely in our homes.
Yes.
And there's no doubt about it. Technology is here to stay.
Yes.
We're surrounded by it. It just covers every area of our life.
In every room.
Absolutely. We use it in our cars. We use it. We use it just everywhere. When we're shopping, we use it when we're in our house. And there's no doubt it's here to stay. And we're not against it. We're for it. We believe in technology. But we believe that it is a tool that must be wisely used and continually monitored.
Absolutely.
And you moms and dads that are listening, and even maybe you singles, or just you that are newly married, or maybe even retired. How long has it been since you did a technology monitoring? How long has it been since you just checked? How are the phones? How's the internet?
Right.
And what's really being watched on your TV?
Right.
And if we don't monitor technology, we will, without doubt, we will use it unwisely.
Absolutely. So
it has to be monitored. So if you remember 4 weeks ago, we started talking about the key words of better and balanced and best.
Yes.
We talked about how to keep technology, what it looks like in its proper place, and how we can recognize that, wow, it's out of place. That was in part one. And then for you that joined us on part two, we just really talked about nudges. That was one of our key words there. And what we've been doing is our hearts were provoked ourselves because we read or listened to online. I read it. Bethany listened to it. Tech-Wise Family.
Tech-Wise Family.
And that's by Andy Crouch. That's a book you ought to get. It's a book you ought to read. He has such a balanced approach. It's good reminders in so many areas. He covers just things I wouldn't have even thought of covering in a book about technology.
Yes, it was awesome.
And, it was awesome. So we got the idea of nudges and choices from his book. And even he helped us to think through a definition of technology, and that was in part 3. And then what we did is we started trying to put together some commitments that Bethany and I have. The book challenged us about making commitments.
Right.
And so we really came up with 5, and we've given you 3 so far. Our first commitment was that we wanted to grow together as a family.
Right.
We wanted our kids to have wisdom, character. And so forth. And there was something that I mentioned in there that we've talked about, even Bethany and I, several times recently, about the fact that we either do the hard thing now or the hard thing later.
Right.
And if we do the hard thing now, meaning we police what the children are watching as we're training them how to handle technology and the issues of life.
Right.
And that spills over into so many things for us.
Yes.
Sometimes we've allowed little things to go. It wasn't that big of a deal because it would have been a really hard thing to say no.
And it didn't seem like it needed to be a hard no at that time.
That's true. And then because we didn't do the harder thing by saying no.
Right.
that really came back to bite us.
Yes.
That was okay. Now we have to do the harder thing later.
Now the hard thing comes, and the hard thing at the end is harder than the hard thing at the beginning.
Yeah,
that's what we're trying
like a paradox,
to say.
But it's really true.
Yes.
So there'll be some issues of technology that's going to be hard for you to handle. To say no to your children who desperately want that new app or that new social media.
Right. All their friends are doing it.
Everybody else is, and
right.
And it's just a hard thing to say no.
Yes.
But doing the hard thing now makes life easier later on and prevents you from having to do a harder thing later.
That's right.
And so then we said, secondly, that we wanted to use technology on purpose. We don't want to just turn the TV on just because. We want to turn the TV on for a reason.
Because there is something worthy of our attention.
Right. and we try to think through the times we want the screens not to be a part of our lives, like dinner and car rides and church and and after certain hours and before certain hours and things of that sort. And we grade that, when they're younger. We obviously have more, we have more rules about that.
Right.
Things they can't do.
And they're smaller. Yes.
And then as they get older, we give them more opportunity, a little more leeway. And moms and dads, you have to think that through about where your children are. And then we closed part 4 last week by talking about we want to learn skills that have lifelong ramifications. And a TechWise family, the book TechWise Family, pointed out that technology can often be replaced by non-technology. Rather than have music always in our ears, we can sing together as a family. We can sing together rather than listening. We can sing together,
right? Or play music.
And we can
on
play
an
games
instrument.
Instead of microwaving a meal. We can learn to cook a meal. and it's not wrong to listen to music. It's not wrong to microwave. Technology is not wrong,
right?
But some of the great value of life is taking the time to cook the meal, put it together, learn how the ingredients work, and make it special. And all of those kind of things. So that's where we ended last week. And let's close this week. We wanted to give you 2 more commitments and just some final comments. And so we're going to jump right in here. The 4th commitment that we want to give is simply this. Go ahead, sweetheart.
We want to protect our family from internet harm.
Now, everybody knows that's a big one.
It is. And it's something that we have covered on previous podcasts, just how to protect from internet harm, but we just felt like it needed a little more of, reinforcement.
A reminder.
Reinforcement. And also, since we started the podcast on the tech and being careful about tech in your family, we've had a few questions in this direction. And we weren't necessarily going to go in this direction because we had covered it, but we feel like we need to cover it again.
Absolutely. And there's always questions.
Right.
And maybe you listen to the first one, but my assumption is that people are like us. Even though we're very careful, after a while, we just kind of start floating along.
Right.
And then we stop and say, we haven't checked a phone in some time. Let's check a phone.
Back it up.
And so we always have to continually be reminding ourselves that technology has to be monitored.
Yes.
And we have to keep up with that. So in protecting our children from internet harm, there was really 2 things, and we'll break these down a little bit for you. The first thing we wanted to talk to you about is the fact that we need to teach our children.
Right.
And secondly, we need to protect ourselves and our children.
Right.
But here was a quote that really caught my attention in the book that we just finished. And the author said this. He said, "The path to health is not encasing our children in some kind of germ-free, sterile environment that they will likely try to flee. Rather, it is having a healthy immune system that equips us to resist and reject the things that do not lead to health." Now break that down and think that through just a little bit. For one thing, no matter how good we are as parents, technology is moving along at such a rapid pace.
Right.
Every time your children go somewhere, they're going to see stuff, they're going to hear stuff.
Right.
Anytime a child from the neighborhood stops by to talk to your children, chances are they're going to have a phone in their hand or an iPad or some device in their hand.
Right.
Rather than try to protect our children from all possibilities of damaging themselves.
Right.
What the author said was the best thing to do is to teach your children, to help them to build healthy immune systems.
Yes.
So that they know how to resist and reject the things that are unhealthy. And we as parents can, put them in a sterile environment, no internet, no movies, we're never leaving our house. There's all kinds of things we could go overboard to protect our children, but living in a normal world means that our children are going to be around friends.
Yes.
They're going to be around neighborhood kids. They're even going to be at grandpa's and grandma's house who may have a computer and have never heard of an internet filter.
Yes. They're going to be riding in the car and seeing digital billboards.
Absolutely.
There's so much.
It's just surrounding
that you
us.
cannot possibly take your child totally out of this culture.
That's correct.
You really can't.
So protecting our family from internet harm starts with teaching our children. Mm-hmm. And we have to, here's just some things we would have to teach them. And this is so important, especially for you moms and dads. It's vital to teach your kids what to expect.
Right.
So that they're not caught off guard when somebody shows them something or they stumble onto something.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that they know what to expect, and then on top of that, they learn how to respond.
Yes.
In advance.
Yes.
So it's not like they stumble onto something and they have never seen anything like this before in their life, and they've never heard anything like this before in their life.
And they don't know what to do with it.
They don't even have a vocabulary to explain what to do with it.
Right.
So what we do is we want to teach our children what to expect and how to respond. Right. And on top of that, what to do.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
This is how you respond. Now, what do you do about it?
Yes.
You just saw something that you shouldn't have seen, that you know is inappropriate.
Right.
You just saw something that you know, wow, that's not good.
Right.
Well, what do you do about it? And your steps for your son or daughter may be different than ours. Mm-hmm. But, that's not just something that's important for our children. That's important for us.
Right.
If we see something, what do we do about it?
Yes.
Do we just kind of erase it and move on? And no, there are specific steps in the Bible. The Bible tells us we're to take every thought into captivity.
Right.
The Bible tells us that we are to hide God's word in our heart, that we might not sin against God. Mm-hmm. We keep our way clean by taking heed to the word of God.
Yes.
And over and over again, the Bible reminds us that we have to have steps prepared, in place, ready to react to the issues of this world.
Right. And there are verses, I think it's in Proverbs, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not.
Chapter 1, verse 10.
And so we just teach your children, no, you say no. I don't look at that, or no, I don't watch that TV program. There is the verse, flee youthful lusts. Yep. If someone is persistent or aggressive, you can flee, you can run.
Absolutely.
You can get away from there.
And Joseph's our illustration of that.
Right, absolutely.
In Genesis 39, who fled.
Right.
And it cost him dearly, but he left with his purity and he left with his character.
Yes. So basically what we're saying is you need a game plan, right?
Absolutely.
Your kids
a game plan.
need a game plan.
That's right. So we're teaching our children. That's the first thing we want to say. But the second thing is to protect yourself and your children.
Could we just back up to the first point there about giving them a game plan? We didn't call it that. Teach your children. We called it teach your children. But I would also say in this, when you're teaching your children, be just very practical and very commonplace about it. Yeah. Don't treat it like this is going to be the most awful thing that you have ever seen, and if this ever happens to you, probably your life will be ruined. Don't do that to your kids. Just treat it very practically, because it is very common.
It's very common, and if they treat it nonchalantly almost.
Right.
I hate to use that word.
Right.
But the idea is if you don't want them reacting so violently that it becomes a part of their mind, that violent reaction.
Right.
And it can actually backfire on us to where the intensity with which we deal with it draws them to it rather than away from it.
Well, and it also can draw them away from us, because if they do see something,
that's true.
Instead of coming home and saying, oh, you told me that this might happen, and yes, this popped up on my friend's phone, and so I told them, no, we need to turn that off right now, or we need to put your phone down. Instead of coming home and telling us, if they feel like you've treated this in such an intense way, they're not going to want to share it with you, and you're not going to be able to have those good conversations.
That's a really good point.
That can lead to more of a game plan.
Because if we tell our kids that this is going to ruin your life, and your 9-year-old sees something at school, all of a sudden, if he's got a tender heart or she's got a tender heart, she's thinking, oh my goodness, I've just ruined my life.
Absolutely.
And that's not what we mean at all. So we've got to teach them, and teach them why. Teach them why.
Yes.
Just say this is important because God wants you to do right, and it's worth it. And so you teach them the why. Mm-hmm. And then here we move. What we're talking about is here, our fourth commitment is we want to protect our family from internet harm.
Right.
So we're going to teach them.
Yes.
And secondly, we're going to protect ourselves and our children. And in TechWise Family, one of the things he said as well was that even those with healthy immune systems wear rubber gloves and hazmat suits when they're dealing with toxic environments.
And we've seen a lot of that on the news, haven't we,
Absolutely.
with the pandemic?
And masks.
Yes. So we're used to hazmat suits and rubber gloves.
So here's what you can think.
The Youngs don't wear hazmat suits. just so you know.
That's true. I mean, unless you're telling me something I don't know here.
No, we don't. We do wear masks if they mandate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
So in dealing with the toxic environment, however, we can have a really healthy immune system, but knowing that technology can offer a toxic environment,
yes,
it's just vital that we have protections in place. And,
yes.
And I believe that accountability is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Your teenager will deny that. Your teenager says, this is my phone and it's my privacy.
Right.
I can't believe you won't give me my privacy. Well, you don't have to take apart your teenager's life and read every detail of every little text that they're texting to their best friend. That would actually be unwise.
Right.
And probably would drive your teenager. Give them some privacy.
Yes.
But at any given time, you have every right to check the internet history.
Yes.
And you should.
Mm-hmm.
If you have never looked at your teenager's internet history, then I say it gently, but you got some work to do. Because you are not protecting your children from the potential of internet harm.
Right.
And accountability is always a good thing, and there are many apps available today to help make that easy.
Yes.
And so here's a couple of them. Let's list these for our audience.
So we use Covenant Eyes.
That's a big one we've used for a long time.
Yes, and it's well worth it. And it really, I know there can be sometimes that it can block things that are okay, but there are ways around that with the person who owns the account, and so that's no problem. It really is well worth it.
And if you'd like to learn about Covenant Eyes, actually, if you send me a message from our website, I can send you a link. And the link actually is, they do some support of our ministry.
Oh, wonderful.
That's kind of a new thing. And if you sign up for Covenant Eyes through us, it's not much, but it is a little bit, and it allows us to help us pay for the costs of our podcast.
Awesome. And it can also help your family be accountable.
Absolutely. And so write us if we can help you with that one. There's also Clean Router. That's a Wi-Fi device that we use. Everything that people log into Clean Router in our home.
Right.
And it sends an email letting you know what each device is looking at and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. A new one that a pastor friend told me about that I've really enjoyed. I'd heard of it, but I've never used it. But we've started using it. It's called Accountable to You. And Accountable to You, I think I'm liking. It's new. I'm checking it out. I'm liking what I see. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's more of an accountability, whereas Covenant Eyes has accountability, but also filtering.
Right.
And you can set the filters, like for elementary age or for teenagers.
Right.
You can block different sites or different apps.
Mm-hmm.
I was with a pastor friend the other day who was using MobiSip. Mm-hmm. And the reason we knew he did is because we were discussing a passage in the Bible that had to do with sodomy.
Oh.
And so he went into his phone because he was running a reference to see, how was that translated in a such and such version of the Bible. And when he went to type in that word, MobiSip blocked his search device and wouldn't let him look that word up.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, great, now I'm going to have to talk to my wife about why I was looking up sodomy.
Well,
so
it is worth the headache, though, people.
It is worth it. It is. So accountability is a good thing. Filtering is a good thing.
Yes.
And here's a recommendation that we believe, but it was reinforced for us in this book, TechWise Family. And this is important. We should have each other's passwords.
Yes.
And parents have total access to children's devices.
Absolutely. We
should have each other's passwords because if your wife can't log into your phone, that's dangerous.
It is.
If your husband can't log into your phone and read your messages, that's dangerous. Something's wrong there.
Yes.
And by the way, if you're a teenager listening, if your parents can't log into your phone and see what you're looking at, it implies that you have something to hide.
Yes.
And normally it's not about privacy. It's about I don't want somebody to see what's going on.
Right.
And that's true whether you're a teenager or an adult.
That's a huge red flag. If you have children that are like, no, you can't have my password, or a spouse that, no, it's my password. Well, it's just a work phone. No, you can't see it. That's a red flag.
I'm going to say to you guys, if your wife asks for your password and you won't give it to her, you might as well know that she knows that something is wrong.
Yes.
And ladies, the same thing's true. If your husband has asked for access to your phone and you won't give it to him, something is wrong. And you ought to know that.
Yes.
And I will promise you that technology has the power to destroy you and your marriage and your children and your income. It's deadly. So this is not a cute little game. This is a life or death situation.
No, and because technology and the perverseness that can go along with it. Not always. Obviously, we've already talked about that, but because of the danger that can go along with it, isn't it worth it just to be very open and honest with everything in your life. I think
Absolutely.
It's just, isn't your marriage worth it? Aren't your children worth it to be open and honest?
Sure. Here's some stats that I came on too, and I thought these were just a little startling. 62% of teens reported having received a nude image on their device, and 40% reported having sent such an image.
That's so sad.
Now, here's what was interesting to me. It's the word reported. If 62% of a survey of teenagers reported it,
we're honest enough to say it.
It would make you think it might be higher than that, because there may be some who'd be afraid to report that.
Right.
And if that's true, you think about a youth group of 10 kids, that would mean 6 out of the 4 would fit the statistics.
6 out of the 10.
6 out of the 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
6 plus 4 equals
6
10.
plus 4. That's right.
I got it. I was tracking you,
Not
baby.
bad there, baby. Thank you. And so just I throw that stat out there just to let you moms and dads know this is a serious matter.
It really is.
And Bethany and I, here's our goal. This is our 4th commitment in our family. We want to protect our family from internet harm.
Yes.
And we only got a few minutes. Let's throw the last one in there and let's close this series.
Okay.
All right. Here's the last one.
The last one is we want to connect with our children on the deepest level possible.
And this is just worth our closing. Technology is such a blessing. Having the coffee makers we have, having the cool cars that we have, having GPS on our phones, having
absolutely.
FaceTime, and technology is incredible.
It's wonderful.
We use VidAngel, and we can watch movies, and we can block anything that we don't prefer or don't like or disagree with. Technology is amazing, but technology has done one massive damage to our families, and it's destroyed conversations.
Yes,
and it's not just our families; it's everywhere.
Oh yes.
And in this book that we've been reading and sharing with you some thoughts from it, he references a book called Reclaiming Conversation, written by Sherry Turkle, in which she makes the case that conversations, meaningful, real conversations, take 7 minutes to really begin. And what she says in that her articles about this, she says that after 7 minutes of small talk, people consider taking a risk and opening their heart. And the reason she points that out is because her point being in relation to technology is that any interruption during those first 7 minutes destroys the possibility to go deeper. Any interruption.
Right.
Like for instance, she would say, looking at an Apple Watch during a conversation just removed all potential to have a deeper conversation.
Right.
Looking at your text. The only answer in order to have deep conversations is shutting down devices.
Right.
And I thought that was just really an interesting conversation, because everywhere we go, everybody we saw in the restaurant where we had lunch today had a phone at the table.
Yes.
In fact, multiplicity of them were on their phone while they were eating with other people.
Yes.
Which they basically, according to this particular author, which means that nobody in that restaurant had meaningful conversation. At least not deep ones. We keep everything very surface level.
Yes.
How are you? And we go back to whatever we were doing on our phone.
Right.
Or a quick question, go back to doing what we were going to do.
Yes.
Bethany and I have 5 children, as you know, and we want to do everything in our power to connect with our children on the deepest level possible. You know, there's some places that are perfect for conversations.
Yes.
For us, the dinner table.
Absolutely.
And we have a rule that you can't have a phone at the table.
Yes.
And we put it aside, and the dinner table has been our place to have deeper conversations.
Yes.
It's one of the places. And it's a place where, you know, you can be talking and laughing, and the next thing you know, having a very, just out of the blue, it's like, where did that conversation come from?
Right.
Well, it's because the children had the opportunity to ask a deeper question.
Yes.
Or mom or dad had the chance. And the next thing you know, we're discussing some big issue in a very amazing way.
Or just sharing about our day. It's very hard to share about your day if you're scrolling Instagram.
Sure. Sharing emotions.
Yes.
And sharing emotions not only from yourself, but with someone else who's also sharing your emotion.
Yes.
And so if you're going to connect with your children on a deeper level, or your spouse on a deeper level, or your best friend on a deeper level, we're making the case that one of the things you have to do is you have to deal with some technology problems.
Yes.
And it's just the way it is. So remember that supper tables are meal times are a wonderful time to go deeper. Car rides, she said, is another one. That's a really big one. And how that in days gone by, you'd have huge conversations in the car.
Right.
You'd sing together in the car. You would sing with the radio. You would, and technology has destroyed our ability to talk to each other and sing together in the car.
Right.
And I remember before we had internet and everything, remember we used to have the kids in the car with us, and we had such huge conversations.
Yes.
And with our little ones, they're talking about everything, and
Yes.
it was a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yes.
And so,
Sweet.
Give us the last line there, love, and let's wind this up.
Making deeper conversations a part of your life builds a bridge to your kids' trust and opens the door for your kids to reach out for advice and counsel later in life.
The deeper the deeper conversations.
Yes.
Opens the door for us to have a lifelong, deep relationship with our children.
Yes.
Starts now, Mom and Dad.
It does.
For you singles, it starts now. Sometimes singles are like, I just don't have any friends. I'm so lonely. Well, it might be because every time you go out to eat with your friends, you're always on the phone together.
Right.
Deeper conversations happen when we're focused only on the person with whom we're having a conversation.
Yes.
And so it's worth our thinking about.
It is.
Well, that's TechWise Family. And we enjoyed evaluating the book. I urge you to get it, urge you to read it.
Absolutely.
We took what we learned in that book and developed these 5 commitments for our lives.
Right.
And they're just ours. He had 10 in his book. We kind of mirrored a couple of his, and others. I know we lived them, but we didn't feel like we needed to make that a massive written commitment.
Right.
But I urge you, wherever you are in your stage of life, that you will use technology wisely in your home.
Yes.
Any final thought?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it all. But if you all have any questions, feel free to give us a message.
Or comments.
Yes. Oh,
And,
absolutely. We'd love to hear
we'd
how
love to hear
this
from you.
may have encouraged you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for listening today. And I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing today, that you'll have a wonderful day and a blessed day. Until next time, we'll see you later.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production. All rights reserved.